Good evening. Today is the last webinar for the series of e-learning, and this is on international regulations. And what I have done is I have also added some slides on the other Indian acts and laws which are related to food safety and standards, like the Indian Metrology Act, what is AGMARK, BIS. These are all related, as you know, and as you have seen earlier, certain foods have to have the Bismarck and certain foods have to have the AGMA. So I thought it would be good that you know where these organizations are and under which act they come. So, if you look at the international regulations, the main regulation that you need to know about, international body that you need to know about is Codex Alimentarius, because almost every country makes their guidelines for their food safety laws and act based on Codex Alimentarius. And Codex Alimentarius Commission provides the guidelines for food safety which the countries can use. So Codex Alimentarius actually is the Latin for food code, and it is abbreviated as CAC. This was established in 1961 under the Food and Agricultural Organization of the UN, and later it was joined by the World Health Organization. So therefore, in many cases, as you see, there will be joint committees of FAO and WHO. The first joint session was held in Rome in 1963. Countries have to become members of the Codex Alimentarius to be able to go to their meetings, attend their meetings, and provide their inputs. So currently, the number of members as of today are 189 members. Member countries are Codex members, and among them we have 188 member countries, and one member is the European Union, which is an organization of several countries. So what is the objective and role of Codex is that Codex is responsible for formulating internationally accepted food safety standards aimed at protecting human health and also ensuring fair trade. Commonly, Codex Alimentarius commissioned by everyone is referred to as Codex. So throughout, I will be also referring to it as Codex. The Codex has approximately 20 technical committees who give inputs for making their guidelines and the standards. So what does Codex do? So the major role or the objective is to harmonize the international food standards with the purpose of protecting, as I said, the health of the consumer and to ensure fair trade practices in food. It also promotes the coordination of all food standards work undertaken by intergovernmental, international governmental and non-governmental organizations. So when the standards are introduced into any national legislation, they contribute to ensure safety of the food. The Commission meets once in a year and adopts international food standard and guidelines. And at every session, some new guideline or some new standard will come up. In the 33rd session, which was held last year, the guidelines for controlling bacteria in seafood and the maximum level for ractopamine in meat was set. So they coordinate, there is a coordination of all food standards. They initiate and supervise draft standards, and you will see that before any food standard comes, it goes through 8 steps. So if any of you have seen the Codex standards, you will see it is the first step, second step, third step, so on. Finally, there is a finalization of the food standards, and there is a publication of the standards worldwide. If you go to the website of the Codex Alimentarius Commission, you will find the standards and they are free to download. Standards also get amended or changed whenever there is a new technology. Since its founding in 1963, the Codex system has evolved and changed. It has become open, transparent, and there is a way to meet the emerging challenges of food safety. And this is very important because, food as a commodity of trade uh, is one of the major markets for trade and income. So if you look at the standards can, the products which comply to the Codex Alimentarius standards can be bought and sold without compromising health or interest of the consumer. What it means is those foods which meet the Codex standards are absolutely safe, and they are considered safe internationally. So the members actually, they are the ones who review these laws, and so therefore they are all internationally accepted because they have scientific and technological basis. So if you look at Codex has the definition, and this might seem very familiar to you because the definition in the Food Safety Act is very similar to this. It is a little more elaborate. You see, in our act, the Food Safety Act, food is defined as, even chewing gum is defined, but it says it does not include tobacco and drugs. The definition in the FSSAI Act is much more elaborate. The Codex Alimentarius has become the global reference point. So if you recollect, when we say, when we looked at the nutrition and the recommended dietary allowance, it says even in the labeling, if there is no RDA provided for a certain vitamin or for a certain mineral, you can use the Codex standard. So that is the importance of Codex. So if a country doesn't have a standard and you want to carry out trade, you can just make your product meet the Codex standard. So the Codex standard has an enormous impact on the thinking of food producers and processors, and it is the consumers, if they are aware of Codex, they know that Codex standards means the food is safe. The standards extend across every continent and ensures that you have fair practice in food trade. So the standards are amended from time to time for manufacturing, processing, safety, and quality throughout the world. So since the Codex came into being in 1962, the international trade has increased by 800%. It has led to the lowering of trade barriers and the lowering of protectionism. Also, what it has done is it has brought about harmonization of international trade. What this means is every country has got its own food laws and standards developed independently, and this caused a lot of barriers of trade between the two nations. And often these laws, disguised as health or safety measures, were designed to protect their product or consumers. For example, the misconception of genetically modified organisms. So the structure of the Codex Commission, it is an intergovernmental body. That means there are members of the Codex Commission are from different countries. The membership is open to all UN member nations. They contribute, as I said, 188 members and one union, that is about 98% of the world. The executive committee oversees the activities of Codex. There is a chair, 3 vice chairs, and 7 others. And the secretariat, which is located in FAO in Rome, oversees the correspondence with all the member states. So only the secretariat is there in Rome. There is no headquarters for Codex Commission. The Codex has got several committees. They have committees for different commodities. They have committees for different subjects. They have regional committees, means in different regions of the world, and they have got regional coordinating committees. So in the Codex committees for commodities, you see we have the Codex committee for cereal, pulses, and legumes. We have a committee for fresh fruits and vegetables, for fats and oils, processed fruits and vegetables, sugars, and the last one on spices and culinary herbs, which was actually initiated by India, that since spices and culinary herbs are traded, the standards needed to be set globally. India initiated, and the headquarters for this committee is in India. Then you have subject committees. So you see it includes contaminants, additives, import and export inspection, food labeling, general principles, methods of analysis, nutrition and foods for special dietary use, pesticide residues, and residues of veterinary drugs in foods. So you have commodity committees, you have general subject committees, and you have regional committees for different regions of the world. So one in Africa, one in Asia, the other Europe, Latin America, Near East, and we have one for North America and the Southwest Pacific. So the one for these are generally all abbreviated. It will say CC Africa or CC Asia, that is CC CASIA. That means it is the Coordination Committee for Asia. Similarly, if we go back, these committees, as you see, are generally abbreviated and known as CCCF or CMAS, which is for methods and sampling. So those who are familiar with this know what these abbreviations stand for or represent. And then we have the regional Codex committees, which are Codex committees in different regions. They actually define the problems and needs. Food and food habits vary from region to region. Standards vary. So the role of the regional Codex committees is to look at the problems of that region, develop regional standards, coordinate the activities of that region, and represent the specific interests of that region to the Codex Alimentaris Commission, and promote the acceptance of the standards in the member countries of that region. And then several countries have got the Codex contact point, which is a link between the Codex Secretariat in FAO Rome and the member country. So the coordination of the Codex activities within a country are carried out by Codex Contact Point or CCP, and for India, the Codex Control Point is at FSSAI. So all the texts, all the documents, all the inputs required for the commission meetings and different steps of the standard formulation will be carried out by the Codex contact point of each of the member countries. So these Codex contact points in every country are responsible for sending of comments on Codex documents or proposals to the Commission and other bodies of the Codex. So they also have to collect all the inputs from the whole country, because the input represents the input of the country. So this is the national codex structures. So you have a codex contact point. They are from national governments. So the national governments have got national codex committees. They could be for the commodities. They could be for the different groups, that is for, say, contaminants thing. And they could also be area-wise. And members' inputs to these National Codex Committee will be given by the industry, by consumers, and by scientific the community. So all the inputs will be received by the National Codex Committee. That represents the inputs of the government, and they will be communicated to the Codex Alimentarius. Also, in the Codex meetings of the different commodities and different groups, representatives will be nominated by the National Codex Committee to represent the country, and they present all the views that have been consolidated. So the Codex contact point has close cooperation with the National Codex Committee, and as I said, they liaise with the food industry, consumers, etc., and there is exchange of information. The National Codex Committee in India, if we see, acts as a consultative group to the government. It formulates the country response to the proposals at the Codex Commission meetings. It nominates delegates to represent the country at Codex meetings. It advises the government on the best possible decisions as regarding the Codex standards, appoints technical subcommittees as it may, whenever it seems necessary, for effective participation of the country in the Codex meeting, and undertakes such other duties. So what you see is the role of the National Codex contact point is a two-way interaction between the, it facilitates the effective interaction between the member country and the Codex Alimentarius. So the tools, Codex legal tools, that means, you know, the acts and rules and regulations which are available with the Codex. One, you have the Codex standards. Two, you have the Codex codes of practice, and you will see Codex has a code of practice for hygiene. It has codes of practice for different industries, and these can be followed. And Codex also has guidelines based on which the country can formulate its own standards, etc. So the Codex standard is a requirement, food requirements for the customers to provide them with sound, wholesome food, free from adulteration, correctly labeled and presented. I'm sure all of you can now understand why it is so important. We have seen what are adulterants, we have seen the necessity to label, etc. The Codex standards explicitly quantify and specify the acceptable form and exactly what is considered to be in compliance for the commodity. So not that Codex has got standards for all the foods and all the commodities worldwide. It has got for a large number of foods. These standards are internationally accepted as the most important consideration when making these standards is safety. The prescribed format, you will see that all Codex standards come in the same format. FSSA now is trying to make all its standards to be harmonized with the Codex standard. So you will see that the new standards which have come out will have the Codex format. So these include the name, scope, description, the essential composition and quality factors, food additives which are allowed for that particular food, contaminants, the residue limits, what is the hygiene criteria required, the weights and measures, methods of labeling the food, and it also gives you the methods of analysis and sampling of the whatever is written in the standard. So the Codex standards, they are built on hazard analysis at critical control points. They are flexible enough to allow the member to incorporate it into their laws. It actually strives for international consensus, and it incorporates all these standards are based on risk analysis. So to get a Codex standard published, it goes through, as I said, 8-step procedure to pass a standard. It is reviewed twice by the Codex Commission, 2 times by the member, and 2 times by the government and other interested parties. So it is a very long, drawn out process, but it is based on science. It is only the science, the safety, and the risk that is concerned. So Codex standards can be general or specific. So you, as I said, you have general standards, guidelines, and codes of practice. These are core texts and apply to all products and product categories. These deal typically with hygiene practice, labeling, additives, inspection, certification, nutrition. The commodity standards correspond to the commodity or a specific product, although increasingly Codex now develops standards for food groups. Example, like one general standard for fruit juices and nectars as opposed to fruit. So the harmonization of the food standards contributes to the protection of consumer health and facilitates international trade. So this is the way the procedure for the Codex standard occurs. So initially, the national governments or the subsidiary king will give a white paper or a discussion paper explaining the reasons why a standard should be made, and it will be presented. Then it is made, it approves, the commission approves this white paper or the discussion paper, and it is, and the recommendations are sent, the executive committee recommendations form step 1. In step 2, the draft standard is made. That is, the proposed draft standard is made. So the Codex Secretariat arranges for the preparation of the draft standard. In step 3, the draft standard is circulated among the member countries and the Codex members to receive their comments. In step 4, the comments are received, they are sent to the Secretariat, and they work on consideration. Then the draft, when you come to step 5, the proposed draft standard is submitted to the executive committee for a critical review and for the commission to adopt it. In step 6, This draft, which is circulated by the Secretariat to all the Codex members and observers for another round of comments. So there is 2 rounds of comments. Then we come to step 7. The body assigned on the work considers the comments and they will amend the draft standard, and finally the new standard is published. So this system has been adopted by India, where we do make a proposal comes, the standard is drafted, the drafted standard is put for comments, the draft standard is put for comments, and today you will see the news that FSSAI is planning to have a new label for nutrition, and the draft guidelines and standards have been published for public comments, where FSSAI wants the nutrition label that if it is high in sugar and salt, there should be a red dot, a red circle. It's what we call as traffic light labeling, where red says that it is dangerous and injurious to health, it is not safe. Green means the sugar and the salt is safe to consume, and amber is nutrition. Those of you who are interested, you should see the guidelines. So here also you see the guidelines are not put into the public domain, but sent to every country for comment. And comments received are incorporated and the final guidelines are made. So if you look at the Codex General Standard for Food Additive, very familiar to you, you will see that the definition is very similar to what we have in the Food Safety and Standards Act. So the labeling guidelines under Codex, also you see they define what is a label, any tag, brand, mark, pictorial or other description manner, written, printed, stenciled on the container of a food. So labeling regulations are also very similar. So Codex has got guidelines for claims, and our recent claims are based on Codex guidelines. Codex has also got guidelines for nutritional labeling, and they have guidelines of when you can make a nutrition claim. So if you look at food labeling guidelines by Codex, very similar to us, we also have all this: name of the food, list of ingredients, net content, name of manufacturer, country, lot ident, date marking, and instructions for use, but we have added more. So the codes of practice, which are published by FSSAI, are advisory text. It is designed to assist the members in achieving the purpose of Codex. It is up to each member country on how to use the code. Typically, they describe hygiene requirements as adequate or acceptable. Yesterday, we saw how it is satisfactory, and considered checklist of requirements for enforcement authorities. The guidelines and recommendations are basic tools to help the member countries elaborate of the standards to conform to Codex. They are not binding, it is not compulsory, but it is accepted worldwide. So it is very useful for developing countries. So if you look, they have what is a code of ethics for international trade in food. The Commission can make quasi-binding guidelines such as the SPCS agreement. So whether to accept or not, members must formally accept the Codex standard. They could either fully accept it or they can accept it with certain changes. So the product is distributed freely under the standard name, and acceptance with specific variations is if it complies with the standard and variation. So the enforcement, The Codex regulation is not binding until it is adopted by the member. The member has to ratify it, while after ratification, violation would then be a violation of member countries' national law and punishment. So if you look at Codex definition, I have put a comparison of a Codex definition and the FSSAI definition. So you can see that the only difference, minor, here it says contaminants are substances that have not been intentionally added to food. So here it means any substance, whether or not added to food, but which is present in such a food. And we have also made this, which is not there in the Codex definition, that is, it does not include insect fragments, rodent hairs, and other extraneous matter. Otherwise, the definition is almost similar. So every country has the right to make a change according to their requirement. So the key areas in which Codex is working now is on animal feed, antimicrobial resistance, biotechnology products, contaminants, nutritional labeling, and pesticide residues. So some work on the contaminants. They have established the maximum residue limits for contaminants, including mycotoxins, metals, and radionuclides, heavy metals, pesticide residues, etc. And these limits ensure food does not contain contaminants at levels which could threaten human health. So if you look at the Codex scorecard, this was update. It was an update of July 2016. So they had 191 commodity standards, 76 guidelines, 50 codes of practice, 4,037 maximum levels of 303 food additives, 4,846 maximum residue levels for pesticide residues, covering 294 pesticides, and 610 maximum residue levels covering 75 veterinary drugs. So who are the advisors and the advisory mechanisms? One is JECFA, which you know is the joint FAO-WHO expert committee on food additives. So this advisory group gives inputs on food additives, contaminants, and residues of veterinary drugs. You have JMPR, which is the joint FAO-WHO meeting on pesticide residues. And then you have GEMRA, which is a joint FAO expert meeting on microbiological risk assessment. And you have expert consultations on topics as required. So now let us look at some of the other agreements, international agreements for this. So the WTO agreement, under the WTO agreements, we have the SPS and the TBT. What is SPS? It is the agreement on the application of sanitary and phytosanitary measures, and TBT is the agreement on technical barriers to world to trade. National standards and regulations harmonized with Codex standard are accepted by the WTO agreements. So if your standard or regulation is harmonized as per Codex, then they are accepted by these World Trade Organization agreements. There are two agreements, as I said, the sanitary and phytosanitary measure and TBT, that is technical barriers to trade. So what is the SPS agreement? It discourages the use of sanitary and phytosanitary measures as international trade barriers. Like saying, India is a third world country, hygiene is not proper in the manufacture, and so therefore trade will not happen, or consignments can be sent back. In the agreement, if codex standards, guidelines, and codes of practice are recognized, they are recognized by the WTO as a reference for settlement of disputes and international trade. If there is a dispute between any two countries based on the SPS, that is the phytosanitary agreement, then you can use these guidelines and codes. You can ask for harmonization based on codex standard, and codex is recognized as the reference body for food safety. So the international trade, what is the legal framework? For human or animal health, the SPS measures are taken to protect human or animal health from risks arising from additives, we know that, contaminants, toxins, disease organisms in food, drink, and feedstuff. For the safety of human life, it is plant or animal carried diseases. For animal or plant life, to protect them, it is to protect them from pests, diseases, and disease-causing organisms. And the SPS measure to protect the country is from other damage caused by entry and establishment or spread of the organisms. So this is in a nutshell what is the legal framework of the SPS, that is the WTO SPS agreement of 1995. So there are several articles, but what concerns us for food is that the members shall ensure that the phytosanitary measure is based on science. It is only applied to the extent necessary to protect human, animal, or plant life. It is not maintained without sufficient scientific evidence and except as provided for in Article 5.7. The three sisters for international standards in the phytosanitary agreement are: for food safety, it is Codex standards; for animal health, it is the OIE, World Organization for Animal Health; and for plant health, it is the IPPC, that is the International Plant Protection Convention. So for food safety and for any international trade, these three are very important. That is the Codex standard, the OIE guidelines, and the IPPC. So Codex Food Safety Disposition, recognized by the SPS agreement, they recognize the maximum limits for pesticide and veterinary drugs. Through the agreement also, the maximum limits for food additives are recognized, the maximum limits for contaminants are recognized, and the Codex standards and guidelines for food hygienic practice or requirements are recognized. So what is the role of OIE in international trade? These three, as we have seen, set official standards. The OIE sets vertical standards, that is the standards for disease. Example, disease-free countries, zones, compartments, safe commodities, trade measures, and inactivation of pathogens. And there are horizontal standards, which are the risk assessment carried out for judgment of the equivalence. Codex is the reference. This should be ISO for food safety. OIE and Codex collaborate to ensure seamless coverage of food production. So how are trade differences resolved? OIE is the voluntary mediation procedure. So technical evaluation based on standards adopted by OIE members. There is no involvement of lawyers. It is less costly. Report is confidential unless parties agree to release outcome are not binding. So if there is any trade difference, you can go to OIE. If there is a trade difference between the countries and there's a thing, you can also go to WTO, which is a dispute settlement. There is a dispute settlement procedure. There is a legal evaluation with possibility of appeal, is very expensive, but the outcomes are binding on the two disputing countries. The report is released publicly once the parties have commented. So trade differences can be resolved by either OIE or WTO. So relationship between IPPC and the WTO SPS agreement. Again, it is one of the three sisters. The members shall base their phytosanitary measures on international standards or justify deviations through risk analysis. Members shall play a full part in the relevant standard setting of the organization. So the principles of IPPC are the right to regulate only when it is necessary, and the measures should be based on risk. They should be technically justified and less restrictive, and they should be non-discriminatory and to be transparent. So the key obligations of IPPC are: you set up a national plant protection organization. So if you look at every country has got its national plant protection organization or section, which is called the maybe called National Plant Protection Center or Institute. You designate an official IPPC contact point. All exports are certified by IPPC so that they are tested to see that the plant products are free of pests, free of foreign pests, free of foreign bacteria, fungus, etc. So any seed or any material that can propagate is first sent to the plant protection. So in India, we have the National Plant Quarantine Center, where all the imported live materials that can germinate are tested before they are given to the importer. So IPPC regulates, certifies export. It also regulates import. So they develop and take into account the phytosanitary measure, and they meet basing report obligations. So you will see that if you become an entrepreneur and you decide to export, you need to get a certificate from the National Plant Quarantine Center. If you want to import any propagating or germinating material, you need to again get a permit from, you should get your consignment tested by the National Plant Quarantine Center, who will give you a certificate that it is free of any foreign pests, bacteria, etc. When we say foreign, it means foreign to India. So the National Plant Protection Organization of any country is to protect the national plant resources and the biodiversity from risks associated with pests which do not belong to that country. So food security, it protects crops to ensure an abundant, highly quality and varied food supply. It is useful for international trade to strengthen the marketability of the commerce by meeting import requirements, and also it has a role to play in environmental protection, preserving natural ecosystem and horticulture plant resources, which is nothing but national biodiversity. So the Plant Protection Organization actually helps to protect our ecosystem. So what is the TBT agreement? It prevents the use of national or regional technical requirements or standards in general as unjustified barriers to trade. The agreement covers standards relating to all types of products, including industrial and agricultural products. Not covered are food standards related to sanitary and phytosanitary measures. It includes numerous measures designed to protect consumers against deception and economic fraud. So Codex decisions recognized by the technical barrier on trade agreement are food labeling, decision on quality aspects, the nutritional requirements, and analytical and simple methods. GATT is the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. It was established in 1947 and it was used to help for continue peaceful relations between countries through lowering of trade barriers. So all these agreements are to see that there is fair trade practice between two countries, the one country which imports and the other country which exports. So again, the GATT is non-discriminatory. It treats imported goods for a member country the same as domestic. So therefore, you see that any food that is imported to India must meet all the rules and regulations of FSSAI. It doesn't meet the regulations. It need not mean that it has met the regulation of the exporting country, and therefore it should be accepted by the importing country. So you see, we do not have, in India, we do not have a different rule for export and for import. But many importing countries want different certificates. And so therefore we have what is the Export Inspection Agency, EIA, and they will give you a certificate as required by the importing country. So it protects the domestic industries, and it requires any country that applies for membership to show a list of current tariffs and other trade restrictions. So WTO was evolved from GATT. It is an international organization that looks to improve trade relations. Its main purpose is to settle trade disputes among governments. So in summary about Codex, it is designed to ensure international acceptance in terms of quality and economic interest, consumer to ensure fair trade practices. Standards are based on scientific principles such as HACCP. It is flexible and can be integrated into the members' national law. The SPCA agreement, GATT, NAFTA all encourage acceptance of Codex. Codex reflects international consensus. Several publications of FAO are available, which can be read, and different countries use these documents. So India, if you see, in compliance with its obligations under the world agreements through various instruments, it has to protect its consumer right. So India protects, these are the other Indian laws, acts and laws that I told you about. So India protects its consumer rights by the Consumer Protection Act 1986, by the Bureau of Indian Standards Act 2016, by the Legal Metrology Act 2009, by price monitoring of essential commodities, and by a price stabilization fund. So what is the Consumer Protection Act? The Consumer Protection Act is exclusively, it protects the consumer. So exclusive consumer disputes redressal machinery at the national, state, and district levels. So you can go to the consumer court, any dispute, It provides simple, speedy and inexpensive redressal. This Consumer Protection Act is for any goods that you buy, not only food. What I want to make, uh, what I want to bring across to you is anything with food also, you can go to the Consumer Protection Act, especially if it has to do with the label. It ensures rights of the consumer for safety, information, choice, representation, and redressal. What is important is it applies to all goods and services. So packaged food becomes a good. So it applies to food. It is a redressal against defects in good, deficiency in service, and unfair trade practices. It gives you relief, including removal or defect or deficiency in services. So therefore, even food is under the Consumer Protection Act. So what are the consumer rights under this act? You have the right to safety, protection against hazardous goods and services. You have the right to be informed about the quality, quantity, potency, purity, and price of goods. You have the right to choose access to a variety of foods and services at competitive price. You have a right to be heard, right to seek redressal, and you have the right to consumer education. The Bureau of Indian Standards Act 2016 replaces the earlier Act of 1986. It established the Bureau of Indian Standards as the national standards body of India. It enables provision to bring under compulsory certification any goods, process, or service in public interest for the protection of human, animal, and plant health, safety of environment, and prevention of unfair trade practices. You will see in the Food Safety and Standard Acts, it is mandatory or compulsory that packaged drinking water follow the Bureau of Indian Standards. So therefore, all packaged drinking water has to have the ISI mark on it. The second one is all infant food and baby food, because these are meant for a very vulnerable population. To establish the safety of it for the infant, all baby food also has to have the ISI mark, and the standards to be followed are the Bureau of Indian Standards. So this is because in this act there is a provision that for compulsory certification of goods in the public interest for the protection of human, animal, or plant health and safety. So therefore, water is consumed, and this is where water causes a lot of health problems. So it is mandatory under FSSAI also because of the BIS Act to follow this. And the BIS has multiple conformant assessment. They are involved in making standards not only for food, they make standards for all commodities and goods. And if you follow the BIS standards for those goods, you will see that the standards are of a little higher than that of FSSAI. If you look at our packaging material, which is to be used for packaged food, you see all those packaged material have to satisfy the IS specification. The IS specification is nothing but that of the Bureau of Indian Standards. Those of you who can remember, I had put up all the IS standards for the different materials that can be used to package foods. So the BIS, in addition, other authorities in addition to BIS may verify the conformity of the products and services to a standard and issue service of conformity. So BIS also enables provisions for mandatory hallmarking of precious articles, and there is a provision for recall. And then you have an act which also is interlinked with FSSAI, that is the Legal Metrology Act. India is a member of the International Organization of Legal Metrology. The Legal Metrology Pack Commodity Rules 2011 require declaration of the name of the manufacturer, importer, or packer. So you see we have this in our labeling declaration: name of the commodity, net quantity, month, year of manufacture, retail sale price, and consumer care details on the package. The enforcement of the action, again, is in the states. It is by the controllers of legal metrology in the state. Just like how FSSAI, the enforcement action of FSSAI is by the Food Commissioner, the enforcement of the Legal Metrology Act is by the controllers of legal metrology in the individual states. Then we had where certain foods had to follow AgMark. So what is AgMark? AgMark is a certification mark which is employed on agricultural products in India, assuring that they conform to the standards which are approved by the Directorate of Marketing and Inspection, an agency of the Government of India. AgMark is legally enforced in India by the Agricultural Producing, Grading and Marketing Act of 1937. The present AgMark standards cover quality for 205 different commodities, spanning from pulses to cereals to oils, including products like vermicelli. So AgMark gets the name, AG standing for agriculture and Mark standing for mark, a certification mark. This term was introduced originally in the bill presented in the Parliament of India for agricultural products. So if you look at the Food Safety and Standards Act, the products which need to have this AgMark certification are the Carbia calosa and honeydew honey, ghee which has an RM and butyrorefracto reading than what is prescribed by FSSAI at 40 degrees, till oil or sesame oil which is obtained from white sesame seeds which are grown in Tripura, Assam and West Bengal. If they are labeled as products of Tripura, Assam and West Bengal, they must have this Government of India and different standards apply. If the same white till oil does not have this AgMark, then it will be tested against the FSSAI standards. Blended vegetable oil can only be sold with AgMark certification. Fat spreads also can only be sold with AgMark certification. And then we have an agency in India which is also associated with food products, and that is APEDA. That is the Agriculture and Processed Food Export Development Authority. This was established in 1985. It came under the Act and it was effective in 1986. The authority replaced the Processed Food Export Promotion Council. That is the Agricultural Processed Food Products Export Development Authority replaced the Processed Food Export Promotion Council. So the functions of APEDA are many. So it is supposed to help in the development of industries for developing and marketing some products. It makes fixes standards and specifications for these products. It carries out inspection of meat and meat products, slaughterhouses, processing plants, storage premises, etc. It is assigned to improve the packaging of these products, improve the marketing of these products outside India, promote export-oriented production of the commodities, collect statistics from the producers and establishment engaged in production, processing and packaging, marketing or export of a list of products, and also to carry out training in various aspects. One example of how APEDA improved the exports of grape is that of what is known as the grape net. Most of India's grape from Maharashtra is exported out of the country to the EU and other countries as table grapes. But because of the pesticide residues, the higher levels of pesticide residues, the export of grapes was affected because there were certain farms which used higher amounts of pesticide, and therefore, consignments got in. So under APEDA, a grape network was created where all the farmers are registered under the GrapeNet. All the grape farmers are registered under GrapeNet, and they have a barcode. So any commodity or any consignment, if there is a pesticide residue higher than the prescribed limit of the importing country, it can be traced back to the farm, whether it is a small farm or a big farm. The consignment can be traced back to the farm. That is the type of work that APEDA does. So the commodities that come under these scheduled products are 14. So you see, it also includes a lot of food products. You have meat and meat products, poultry, dairy, confectionery, honey, jaggery, cocoa, alcohol, cereal products, etc. So the role of APEDA is to see how the export and of these products can be enhanced. And so this ends the class and the e-learning program of the AOAC. We started on April 1st, and this is the conclusion. And we will have one more class next week. That thing, it will be intimated on the website on how to prepare for the food analyst exam. There will be points, tips on and pointers on how to prepare for the food analyst exam. Thank you.